I've always said that the key to a successful affair isn't just lying, it's managing the metadata. Most people get caught because of a stray lipstick stain or a credit card receipt. But when your husband is Simon Vance, those amateur mistakes aren't the problem. Simon is a high-level systems architect for one of the top home security firms in the country. He doesn't just install alarms, he builds ecosystems for the kind of people who have more money than trust. Our home was his masterpiece. It was a living lab of sensors, biometrics, and 4K infrared cameras. Every time a faucet turned on, every time the HVAC adjusted for a body in a room, it was logged on a private server in our basement. To anyone else, it would be a prison. To me, it was a challenge. I am a fitness influencer with a brand built on transparency and discipline, which meant my life was already a performance. Simon thought my constant filming and gym sessions were the reason I was so tech-savvy. He didn't realize I was using that knowledge to find the holes in his fortress. That's where Marcus came in. Marcus was a trainer I met at an invite-only facility downtown. He was pure adrenaline, reckless, loud, and dangerous, the polar opposite of Simon's quiet, algorithmic precision. Our affair was a high-stakes game of digital chess. I spent months mapping the blind spots of our exterior cameras. I discovered that if I walked the perimeter of the garden at exactly 6:14 p.m., the setting sun created a glare on the lens of the north-facing Nest camera, giving me a 20-second window to slip Marcus through the side gate. I even learned how to ghost the system. Simon's servers looked for anomalies. If a door opened at 2 a.m., he'd get an alert. So I started conditioning the system. I'd wake up at odd hours to get a glass of water, or I'd purposely trigger the garage sensor while forgetting my keys. Over time, the AI learned that I was erratic. I was masking my affair within my own manufactured clumsiness. I felt like a genius. I was the one person who had finally outsmarted Simon's unbreakable logic. The masterpiece of my deception was the nursery. We didn't have children yet, so the room was mostly empty, but Simon had installed a top-of-the-line 360-degree camera there just in case. I figured out that the camera operated on a 5-minute buffer before uploading to the cloud. I learned how to loop a 5-minute clip of an empty room over the live feed using a Raspberry Pi I'd hidden behind a bookshelf. While Simon sat in his office or traveled for work, he'd see a peaceful, empty nursery on his monitor. He didn't know that Marcus and I were just one wall away in the master suite. The trap snapped shut last Tuesday. Simon told me he was flying to Chicago for a security summit. I saw him pack his bag. I saw the Uber receipt for the airport. I was finally safe. I invited Marcus over at 9 p.m. I performed my usual ritual. I walked the sunglare path, I activated the nursery loop, and I disabled the internal motion sensors for cleaning. We were in the master bedroom, the only room in the house Simon had promised would remain analog for our privacy. Or so he said. We were caught in the heat of the moment when the world turned red. Suddenly, a sound like a foghorn blasted through the house. It wasn't the standard chirping of a smoke alarm. It was the level 4 breach siren. Every motorized steel shutter on the exterior windows, the ones Simon installed for hurricane protection, slammed shut with a heavy metallic thud. The lights in the bedroom didn't just turn on. They began to strobe in a blinding, rhythmic crimson. "What is that? Elena, what did you do?" Marcus yelled, stumbling out of bed, his eyes wide with panic. "I don't know. The system must have crashed," I screamed back, trying to find my robe in the disorienting light. I ran to the wall-mounted command center in the hallway. I punched in my code. Invalid PIN. I tried my biometric thumbprint. User deauthorized. I grabbed my phone, desperate to kill the alarm before the police arrived. But my app was locked. A message in bold white text sat on my screen. Administrative lockdown initiated by primary user. "Marcus, we have to get out. The police are going to be here in minutes." I dragged him toward the front door, but the electronic deadbolts had engaged. The house was a pressurized box. We were trapped. Then my phone started vibrating. It wasn't a call. It was a notification from the SafeHood app, a community board Simon had set up for our high-end neighborhood. It's an app used to report package thieves or suspicious cars. Every one of our neighbors was on it. My parents, who lived 4 blocks away, were on it. Simon's colleagues were on it. The notification popped up. Critical alert. Violent home invasion at 42 Oak Lane. Live feed broadcasting for suspect identification. Please verify if suspects are known. I clicked the link with trembling fingers. My heart dropped into my stomach. The feed wasn't from the nursery. It wasn't from the hallway. It was a crystal clear, high-definition, wide-angle shot of our master bedroom. Simon had hidden a pinhole camera inside the analog smoke detector on the ceiling. I watched, in horror, a 3-second delayed version of myself and Marcus, half-dressed, frantic, and clearly not being invaded, broadcast to over 400 people in our immediate social circle. The comments section on the app was already moving too fast to read. Is that Elena? Who's the guy? That's not Simon. Is this a joke? Simon hadn't just caught me. He had weaponized the neighborhood's safety to ensure I could never deny what I had done. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. I could see the blue and red flashes of police lights leaking through the slats of the shutters. Because Simon had flagged it as a violent invasion, they didn't wait. A battering ram hit our front door, splintering the oak I had spent 3 weeks picking out. I was marched out onto my own lawn in handcuffs, purely for my protection until they could identify Marcus. The entire street was there. Neighbors I'd shared mimosas with were standing on their porches, clutching their phones, looking from the live feed on their screens to the disheveled woman standing in the driveway. And then there was Simon. He pulled up in his car, not from the airport, but from the parking lot of the Starbucks 2 miles away where he'd been sitting with his laptop, watching the whole thing play out. He walked up to the lead officer, looking like the picture of a worried, heroic husband. "Is she okay?" Simon asked, his voice dripping with mock concern. I saw the motion anomaly on my server. My system flagged a foreign biosignature in the bedroom. I thought she was being held at knife point. I had to alert the neighborhood. I couldn't risk her life. He looked at me then. His eyes were flat, devoid of the warmth I had spent 10 years ignoring. He leaned in, his voice a low whisper that didn't reach the police body cam. "You used a 5-minute loop for the nursery, Elena. But you forgot that my cameras sync their clocks every 60 seconds to the NIST atomic clock. Your loop was out of sync by 3 milliseconds. I've been watching your premiere for 3 months. I just waited for the right night to go live." He turned back to the officer. "Officer, it seems this was a domestic misunderstanding. My wife appears to have invited a guest. I'll handle the repair costs for the door." He didn't look at me again. He didn't even ask Marcus to leave. He simply walked into the house, used his phone to remotely lock every interior door except the one leading to the garage, and left my suitcases sitting on the driveway. I stood there, exposed in the strobe of the police lights, realizing that in a house built on intelligence, I was the only one who didn't have a clue.